Hey there, folks. My name is Jason, sometimes known as the JTL, Painfully Honest Tech, and I, if you didn't know already, am an alcoholic. Every year around this time, I get to thinking about what my life has been like since I quit drinking. It's now been 11 years, which is 4,000 plus days. June 15th, 2012 is when I quit drinking, and so this would be the 11th year. Anyway, if it wasn't for alcohol, I probably wouldn't have started making YouTube videos. I quit drinking on June 15th, 2012. I was lucky in the sense that I'd watched my dad lose everything that mattered to him in his life when he was 40. I had just turned 40 the previous October, and since that time, I'd started making more and more bad decisions about who I was hanging out with, for how long, where I was doing it. I had a young daughter and wife at home, but I was still partying like a 20-something-year-old. The night I decided to quit drinking was a Monday. It was newly summer, and I was out enjoying beers on a patio connected to The Mill, a live venue and restaurant where I played many, many shows over the years that I've been here in Iowa. I had to get up at 6 a.m. the next morning to drive my wife and 7-year-old daughter to the airport in Moline, which was over an hour away from where we live. And then in the middle of the conversation, I just started to cry. Right on the patio, surrounded by people that I knew, in front of someone I didn't know extremely well. Everything just hit me. I was going to end up like my dad, who fell apart at 40, drinking too much, fooling around where he shouldn't be, ultimately losing his wife, his kids, his job, everything. It just all went away in the span of a few years, and my dad died at 60, a really diminished person, even though he did get his drinking under control later on in life. I got in a cab and I went home. I woke up a few hours later to drive my family to the airport so they could go visit my in-laws for a couple of weeks, and I drove back up the interstate hoping I could make it to an appointment I had with a psychiatrist at 9 a.m. It had been booked for a long time before I knew I had to go on the trip, but I had to make it to this appointment. Something in my brain said, I have to make it to this appointment. I'd blown off a bunch of appointments before. The doctor had told me, if you have depression, if you have anxiety, then doing this drinking thing that you're doing is not going to help, and you should think about stopping. And I was like everybody is, I can do anything. I am an alcoholic. But this day, I knew that I had to get there. I called them up. I said, hey, I might be late. I'm on my way. Please hold the appointment for me. And I was doing 80 up Interstate 80 to get there. When I got to the appointment, I sat down to talk to the psychiatrist, and she asked me how everything was going. And I just said, I have to stop drinking. I have to do it. I want to do it today. I need to be done. And she said, okay, called a social worker who came down and went over a bunch of different options that I had. I could go into inpatient rehab. I could do counseling, outpatient. She gave me a booklet with AA meeting times and places, and just kind of talked me through different things that I could do to get this process going. I didn't want inpatient treatment. That seemed like too far to go, but I was ready to stop drinking. So I said, let's set up some outpatient counseling, and I took the AA meeting schedule from her. The quitting part wasn't really what I was worried about. I didn't know what I was worried about. I was anxious about the fact that I wasn't going to have this crutch, this thing that I always held on to. The drinking for me was a way to kind of shut the engine off or punch the clock or whatever and sort of power down my brain, because I've always been one of those people where I'm always thinking about like the next project or thing that I'm doing. And that's just the way I've been. I've been that way my whole life. Drinking helped with my social anxiety. I kind of thought it helped with depression, but it didn't really. It just sort of greased the wheels. It gave me another persona that I could use to go out into the world and be somebody else. And that was all well and good until it started making me someone that I didn't want to be. So I set off from the hospital that day, ready to quit. And here's what I did. By the time that meeting was over, it was almost lunchtime. I walked across to the downtown area, and I went to the Vine, this place where I always used to go in the evenings, get some chicken wings. They had like 60-ounce beers that were cheap at happy hour, and I would drink 5 or 6 of those and watch some sports or whatever, flirt with the waitresses. I don't know. It was a college sports bar. I would just go there with the family to eat, and then I would stay and drink a lot. But this afternoon, I went to the Vine, I sat down at the bar, I ordered wings, as I always do, and some French fries, and a Diet Coke. And that was the first of many Diet Cokes I've had in bars ever since then. That night, my wife and daughter are gone. I have no support system. I don't have anybody there. And I decided that I was going to go to a 6 o'clock AA meeting. I'd never been to an AA meeting before. It was in this house that had been converted into like an AA halfway house or something. They had a big meeting room. I just kind of slid myself in there. And if you've never been to an AA meeting, they go around in a circle and they tell stories or just share based on a prompt or some thought from the big book or something like that. And I found sharing my story was a really good way for me to sort of put my story in a better space. And hearing other people tell their stories and recognizing similarities and recognizing like how lucky I had been that I hadn't gone as far down the hole as some other people had, and being in a room where it was a bunch of people who had had a very, very impactful, very unique experience that is very difficult to explain to anyone who hasn't been there. That first AA meeting was kind of eye-opening. And since that night, where I had this kind of epiphany, I just have never had another drink. And I don't want you to think that it was just like, poof, I stopped drinking and it was easy, because it was not. In fact, the ensuing 10 years of my life, now I didn't go through all the steps with AA and that kind of thing. I did things that I'm not supposed to do. I ran for office 3 times in the first year and a half that I got sober, and then I also moved house, and you're not supposed to make big life changes. And we adopted our son. It's a whole other story, but we adopted our son all within the first 18 months to 2 years of doing this. And so a lot of big changes were going on around me. I was making a lot of big changes to kind of keep my mind off of the big change that I had made. It wasn't working. I was just kind of running around in circles and not really staying home, getting inside my head and trying to figure this stuff out. And that's where YouTube came in. YouTube had been something that I was always interested in. I mean, I had a YouTube channel account since I joined YouTube, because back in the day when YouTube first started out in 2008, you had to start a channel in order to get a YouTube account. So I'd had that, and I'd put up a couple of things over the years, and I'd always been interested in YouTube, but I never really did anything with YouTube. But I had recently bought the PlayStation 4, and my friend Curtis had also recently bought the PlayStation 4. And Curtis, who was a friend of mine from college, we met day one at college as voice majors, and we were the only two punk rock kids in the whole auditorium of new music students. So we kind of banded together, and we've been best friends ever since. Curtis was in one of my bands when I was in college, and we've remained close ever since. And Curtis wanted to play Battlefield 4, and I'd never played a multiplayer game like that, and B, I'd never had a gaming headset, so I needed to get a gaming headset so I could talk to him. I went to Best Buy after watching a bunch of YouTube videos, and I saw that, there was a Turtle Beach headset that was about $75, and the reviews had been relatively good. So I figured, well, it's not the best, it's not the worst, it'll be okay. But it was unusable. It was terrible. I mean, I've been a musician for a long time. I've always had great speakers. I've worked in the studio, so my ears were a little bit more sensitive and attuned. And it sounded like 2 trash can lids just banging together on the sides of my ears. And I couldn't hear myself talk. As somebody who'd been doing a lot of recording my whole life, I was used to being able to hear myself back when I would speak into a mic. And I needed that in order to feel comfortable. Otherwise, it just felt weird. The fact that they sounded terrible, and I didn't get any inkling of the fact that they sounded terrible from any of the YouTube videos that I watched, made me a little fired up. As you might know, I can get a little fired up. And I went ahead and made a video about that. I don't know if it's still available on the channel, but some of my early gaming headset videos are still available on the channel, where I took it upon myself to kind of be a little bit more critical than I was seeing other people be with these gaming headsets. And, I did one video where, it was like a reboxing instead of an unboxing because the headset was so bad. Anyway, a lot of those things are still available on the channel, and that's what got me started on YouTube. And the thing that was fantastic about YouTube, it kind of combined everything that I liked. I liked performing. I liked using technology. I liked talking to people and having a rapport. And so it was a way for me to do a bunch of things that I liked all in one fell swoop, and not have to leave the house, not have to go out and be around people who were drinking, because I still to this day can't get very comfortable around people who are drinking. People started watching the videos. I was having fun making the videos, and then suddenly it, started to grow. It took a lot of years. I started in 2013, 2014, and didn't really take it seriously in 2016, and then 2018 is when the channel kind of took off. And 2019/20 is when I went out and started doing it as my job. All of the things aside about, making your living at doing this kind of thing, and the stress of YouTube and burnout and all that kind of stuff, all those things are real. However, YouTube was the first thing that gave me the chance to make my creative self the driving force of my life. The thing that I did to make money and put food on the table or tech on my desk, or however you want to put it. I'd always wanted to live my creative life and have that be the thing that supported me. And YouTube has given me that opportunity. And I wouldn't have done YouTube. I know I wouldn't have done YouTube if it had not been for the fact that I stopped drinking. And so here I am, 11 years later, still doing the YouTube thing, still not drinking. I finally feel like a real person, which took a long time to get there. I put a lot of I didn't realize how hard I leaned on drinking to get me through social situations and just, how I defined my life. And it took a long time for me my brain to rewire itself, and for me to get comfortable being around people in this sort of non-drinking state. All along the way, YouTube was here as an outlet, and you folks out there were here to watch my videos and communicate with me and be a part of my community. And whether you've been here for a long time or you've just shown up recently, I want to say thank you for doing that, because this has meant a lot to me. It really has changed my life. And without YouTube as an outlet and the people who are watching the videos and communicating with me, I would not have made it this far in this way. I don't know what would have happened. I don't think I would have started drinking again. I've never wanted to have another drink of alcohol since that day. But my life would not be as full. And I have YouTube and you folks to thank for that. So, thank you. Once again, Jason, Painfully Honest Tech. Tech so honest it hurts. Until the next time, I'm out.